Recording in progress. All right. Hello, everyone. It's been quite a while. Um, my name is Kristen, and this is the Dragonfly Heart Medicine podcast. And so I took a little hiatus for a while. I'm back with episode 31, and I'm really excited about our guest today. We're going to talk about a topic we've actually not talked about on the podcast yet, involving the energetics of relationships. And so my guest for today is Jen, and she is a dating coach, a spiritual dating coach to be exact. And she is committed to helping women to spiritually awaken, grow, and shift their personal energy to become absolutely magnetic to their dream partner. She has been certified as a coach in several modalities, including sorry, I can't, Robbins-Madanes, strategic intervention, and sacred depths. She lives in Cincinnati with her husband and three cats. Love kitties. Road cycling and traveling are activities that she and her husband enjoy doing together and have combined the two as a way to bond and also stay fit. Jen also offers one-to-one coaching as well as her signature private coaching program, which she calls Dating Alchemy. So, welcome, Jen. It's a pleasure to have you here on the podcast. Before we dive in with questions, is there anything else that you want to add to all of that about what you do?
Um, no, I think that pretty much covers it. I'm excited to share and talk about the energetics of relationships and whatever else we, you know, come to land on.
Absolutely. So, starting with kind of your own personal journey and like awakening experience and going through that, um, how did it lead you to where you are now? How did that help you learn more about relationships and the energy of relationships and ultimately leading you to helping other women follow that same path?
Okay. Yeah. So backing up a little bit, I struggled for about 20 years with relationships. I had just met guy after guy that was emotionally unavailable. And so, if you're not familiar with that term, basically, I would meet people who were not willing or able to really deeply connect with me. And the relationships would always follow the same kind of pattern where it was kind of me or I would meet them. They would, I wouldn't say love bomb because they weren't really narcissists, but things would be like really great and we'd have some great dates. And then all of a sudden, it's like they would push me away and, not be as responsive, and the energy kind of changed. And I would find myself kind of like pursuing them. It really messed with me and made me anxious. And then it would kind of even out to where maybe either probably I got more tired of pursuing them and then they realized they were going to lose me. So they kind of try to pull me back. And we would spend the next few years kind of doing that little dance. Um, some of them were worse than others. There were some that were a little bit more even keel. And I was even engaged twice. But when it came to actually getting them to go through with it, things completely changed. They just drug their feet or something happened and we would end up breaking up. So, long story short, I would spend between 2 and 4 years with each of these guys. Probably with most of them within the first couple of 3, 4 months, I probably knew they weren't going to be the one that I was going to spend my life with, but yet I would hold on to them because, they didn't want to be alone and I didn't have a lot of friends. So they were my only like social outlet at the time. And so I was afraid to get rid of that until I, met someone else. So, it was a really hard time for me because I really wanted to have a partner. I thought that that's how my life should go. Like, thank goodness I didn't want children. Otherwise, I would have been a real mess. But I didn't get married until I was 43. So
Mm.
what I ended up doing was, well, I had a good friend at work, and it was a male friend. And I was hoping that he would be able to give me some great advice. You know, him being male, like, what am I doing wrong? And I'll never forget, he told me, he's like, well, you seem to be the common denominator in all of these relationships. I was pissed because at the time I was thinking that no, it's them.
Mhm.
It's all them. It's not me. And so I was forced to kind of take a step back and be like, well, maybe it is me. But I took the wrong path in thinking that. Instead of becoming empowered and looking for the pattern and what is actually causing it,
Mm.
I instead went into victim mode of there must be something wrong with me.
Mm.
It must not be in the cards for me. The universe doesn't want me to have this, or God doesn't want me to have this, right? And so there was a bit of a surrender, a give up of like, well, I guess this isn't going to happen. But there was also a part of me that kind of wouldn't let that happen. So I was still kind of looking for a way to find out how to shift this and find the person. I knew there had to be someone out there for me. And so I had a friend that suggested I see a psychic medium that she had been to and had helped
Ooh.
her. And I was not really a woo type back then. I was kind of like, I guess it's better than seeing a therapist because in my mind, therapy was for the weak, and I had come through so much in my life, and I figured, I had already done this healing. I don't need to go back and do that. It's not what I would say today. So
Mhm.
keep that in mind. My views on that have changed, but that's where I was back in the day. So probably a lot of your listeners are maybe there as well. And so I went to see the psychic medium, and the best thing that came out of it was she gave me a book. She's like, "You need to go find this book, read this book." It was The Cosmic Power Within You by Joseph Murphy.
Mm.
And it was really a book about manifesting. But it was written in such a way that he used a bunch of people's stories and put it together. And I got to see where they were before the story, where what they ended up with after the story, and the little steps they took in between. So I thought, well, I could try this. And so I did. I set out to all the things he outlined in the book. I became clear on what it was I wanted. Um I held the belief ahead of time that what I wanted was out there, because that's an important part of manifesting that people sometimes don't get right, because they kind of, well, I'll try this and hope things happen. No, you have to believe it ahead of time. So I worked on that belief. Every day I made time to picture it, to imagine that I had already have this, that it is done, that it's going to happen. And then I started to take action out in the world. That's your signal to the universe that you want this. And 3 months later, I was introduced to the man that is now my husband.
Mm.
So I went from being completely disempowered, thinking that there was something wrong with me, that there just wasn't enough good men out there, um, to, okay, well, maybe there is something that I can do. I'm going to try this. I'm going to believe that this spiritual law, it's kind of a law. It's made up of a bunch of different spiritual laws. But that this thing is real and it can help me. And sure enough, it did.
Mm,
So, that is probably, my biggest takeaway for people out there that might be struggling with the same thing that I was, is that you have more power than you think you do. I know it feels like you don't. I know it feels like everything is out there conspiring against you to have a relationship, but that's not what's actually happening. The energetics behind that are really it's really reflecting what's going on with you. And that's what that book helped me to understand, was the thinking that I had at the time was really creating the results that I had. And that was like the hugest realization for me at the time. And
mm,
as soon as I embraced that and I was like, oh, you mean all I have to do is change the way that I'm thinking about this? 3 months later, I met my husband. So um, it does work. I am a testament to that.
mm. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing a little bit about your story. I can relate to like a lot of my past relationships. In the beginning, things were great. It's like we fell in love hard and fast, and then all of a sudden it was like a flip switched. There wasn't like a gradual shift in energy. It was like all of a sudden something would shift and they would just no longer be interested. Yet, similar to you, I would hang on to that relationship because I didn't want to be alone. And it's like I would hold on to this relationship but still pursue a possible other, and like this like kind of like go on the monkey bars, like not really, letting go. And I love how when you talked a little bit more about the manifestation process, mentioning two things that stood out to me. The first one is that you took time to do it every day. I feel
Mhm.
like a lot of times we want and desire things and we just ask God or universe or our guides for it once, and then we just like leave it alone and wonder why it's not happening. And then also, yes, we ask, but there's still action steps that we can take towards that. Um, and so I like how you touched on that a little bit. Is there anything else you can talk about when it comes to manifestation, especially as it relates to manifesting a partner?
Yeah. So we have to think about, I like to think about the law of attraction is made up of just about all the other laws. Like they all work together to help you manifest. And so there is a law that I think that people don't really pay a lot of attention to, which is the law of reciprocity. And basically the law of reciprocity is, if you if you think about all the good you do in the world, all of the help that you give to others, all of the value that you put out into the world, you can think of that as your little value bank, right? And then you will start to get those good things coming back to you once you have kind of filled this bank. But what the law also states is that you are responsible for balancing that.
Hmm.
So, for example, and the people pleasers in the house, I'm talking to you here. If you do and do and do for others, and you don't allow anyone to do for you, there's no balance, right? There have to be boundaries, and you are responsible for keeping those boundaries. The other person is not responsible for keeping your boundaries. The other person is not responsible for giving back to you. So it is something that you have to expect. And if you don't do that, then you're going to find you attract a lot of people that just take advantage.
Mm.
So if you happen to be a people pleaser and you go out of your way for everyone, yet no one seems to do the same to you, you have to look at where you're not upholding your own boundaries. Where are you not standing up for yourself and saying, damn it, I deserve some support too. Right? So if there's no balance there, then you're not going to get the reciprocity that you are wanting. And how that translates to manifesting a relationship is you can do all the steps right. But if you're not policing those boundaries and you're not standing up for that balance, then you're still going to attract takers, right? That's not going to change. You might attract nicer takers,
Mm.
but you're still, at the end of the day, you're not going to be fulfilled because you're not willing to uphold those boundaries.
Mm.
And there's a host of reasons that people don't want to uphold boundaries. I get it. It's a work in progress. But what I would say first to people that want to manifest their perfect partner is you want to work on that balance.
Mm.
You have to have the balance first. Otherwise, the universe is still going to give you the universe is just reflecting back to you what you are at all times. So we're always creating. We're always creating. Manifesting is not an intentional thing. It's something that happens whether you intend it or not. It's just that if you want to do intentional manifesting to bring to you what it is you say you want, um, then you have to have all your ducks in a row. You have to look at the energy behind it. So I think that's a major one that people don't really think about when they're trying to manifest. And the other one that I think is really huge is you have to feel it ahead of time. You have to have the belief ahead of time because if you don't, you, I mean, you have to look at it as like you are an energy being, right? And you are always broadcasting something out into the world and receiving. So that's kind of how this works. And your broadcast out into the world is made up of everything that you are thinking and feeling at the time. So if you don't believe that what you want is out there, or you don't believe you deserve it, or that you can have it, that's going to be a chink in that broadcast that you're putting out into the world. So if you are saying you want it, but you at the other hand don't believe you can have it, that is going to create like a cancellation out of that signal. And so it's going to be
Mm.
like the universe isn't even picking up on what it is you want, right? Because you're telling it you don't think it's there or you don't deserve it. So you don't end up getting that back unless you ahead of time believe it. And what I like to do with this is like the time that I said that I was every day spending a few minutes thinking about it, I was bringing that feeling into my body of what it would feel like to have that. What would it feel like to have a relationship that was supportive? How would I feel to have that? You know, how would it
Mm.
feel for me to find someone that would give me love without me having to work for it? You know, and I would just make sure that I felt that in my body. And then that was going to naturally come out in my
Mm.
energy broadcast out into the world. And that works faster than anything
Mm.
because
Mm.
it's in line. You have your energy all in line. And that's the juice behind it, really, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember in a relationship actually really recently. I remember getting upset with my partner because they kept putting other things before me. And it felt like I was last on their list. And I
Mhm.
remember like sitting, I hadn't even discussed this with them. I just remember sitting down one evening. I was like, man, like I just feel like I'm always on the back burner. Like I'm always at the bottom of their list. And then this voice just came in and said, do you put yourself first on your list? And I was like, no, I don't. And so I didn't even, like I said, I didn't even discuss this with my partner, but I started to be more mindful of moments when I was putting myself last and when I wasn't having boundaries and all the things. And I've just spent a couple weeks being more mindful about that. And the relationship shifted without me having to even have that conversation with them. And so I feel like now in relationships, I bring a little bit more of like this curiosity to like, how is this relationship a mirror for things that I need to work on? It doesn't mean that I never have conversations about things that bother me, but it's just like a really interesting how yeah we're really manifesting all the time and we can be intentional about certain like really specific things we want. And that's why I also love how you talk about feeling it in your body. There's something that's so powerful when we're really fully grounded and rooted in our body and we can anchor the things in that we desire. Early on in my spiritual awakening or journey or whatever you want to call it, I remember I was just constantly wanting all these things, but I didn't believe that I could have them. And I was so disconnected from my body. There was no way I knew what it would even feel like. And none of these things I wanted was manifesting. So I love the slightly different take you talk about with balancing that reciprocity and then just really feeling it in our bodies. And so once we've kind of started to work on this manifestation process, how do we also recognize these like patterns that we have that keep showing up in relationships and starting to shift those patterns so that this ideal partner can actually be something that's accessible to us?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So it takes awareness. If you're not aware of something, then you can't do anything about it. And this is where a lot of people are just on autopilot, even going throughout their day. Um, things they just don't have any awareness of, what how they're feeling at any given time. There's no awareness of how their actions are maybe affecting someone else. Um, I have a lot of people in my life that are like this. And so the first thing I would say is if you are having a repeating pattern that's going, every time you try to do something, it could be anything, relationships, could be your job, could be whatever. You have to develop an awareness that there is a pattern. So we have to kind of take that step back and be like, huh, even though, the last guy maybe looked different, maybe he did a few different things, the energy of that relationship was the same as the energy of this other relationship. And the best way we can connect with and become more aware of anything is a mindfulness practice.
Mm.
Meditation is a great way to learn how, because it's a skill. It really is. It's a skill that you have to practice and you have to hone. And the only way that you can do that is if you can get as quiet as you can. So when you sit and you don't do anything else, you don't have other distractions, then you're kind of forced to think about, your life. Um, and this is, it there's a lot of people that feel like they have to just go, 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 do, do, do. And I think that a lot of that is because they don't want to think about
Mhm.
their life. They don't want to think about how they're feeling. They've just been trained to do. So if that's you, that might be a trigger or it might be a key or the tap on the shoulder to be like, maybe take a minute here. And, there's a whole meditation's a whole big thing. I don't want to get into how to do it and all of these things, but what I want people to know mostly about meditation is the point is not to quiet it's not to not think. Okay, the point of meditation is to become aware that you are thinking. Simple as that. Just become aware of your thoughts so that you can tell that your thoughts are not you, that you're a totally separate being. And when you can develop that consciousness to watch, I call it the watcher consciousness, that's awareness. Okay. And that's when you can develop that, then in any given situation that happens to you, even when you're highly triggered, you will be able to kind of take that little pause and step back so that you can see what's really going on. And when you can see what's really going on in your relationships as a pattern, then you can work on solving that pattern. And the best way I like to do that and that I work with my clients on is I'll help them understand their pattern. Because if you don't know the words and you're not good at really seeing the similarities, it can be hard to see it for yourself. Like you had the awareness that you weren't putting yourself first. And so, you couldn't really expect your boyfriend to do that, right? Because people are going to treat you how you treat yourself.
Mhm.
But we don't always think of it in that way, do we? So it took some awareness on your part to step back and go, oh, well, I'm not even putting myself first. And that's the level we need to start to get to within our relationship. So when we see that someone is being emotionally unavailable and they don't really want to connect with you, they don't want to see you, or take the time to really, feel into you, that's when you kind of have to step back and go like, well, am I willing to do the same thing? And that was a huge one for me because I realized that there was a point that I was not willing to go past in a relationship. So I wasn't willing to go as deep. And these guys were picking up on that because they didn't want to either. So that's why
Mhm.
there was that attraction. So if emotional unavailability is a theme in your relationships, you have to look at the places where you as well are being emotionally unavailable. And there's lots of reasons for it, for emotional unavailability. Um, they all come down to fear. It comes down to childhood conditioning, right? That was one of my ways that I survived my childhood was by keeping everybody at a distance and not letting them in. Um, and
Mhm.
there's so many people on this planet that have done the same thing. But at a certain point, you have to realize that what served you when you were younger is now becoming a hindrance in your ability to have great relationships. And so that's the other part of the puzzle is when you can identify the energy of your relationships and you can tie it back to the energy of the relationship with your family,
Mm.
like it's almost magical. It's like every time I can connect that dot for one of my clients, it is a breakthrough moment where they're like, "Oh my gosh, I never thought of it that way." You know, my parents were emotionally unavailable, and now I'm dating, everyone I date is also emotionally unavailable because I'm so used to that energy that feels right. And so I look for it out in the world, even though it's what I say I don't want.
Uh,
Yeah. So it's connecting those dots, and it's not always an easy process, to do on your own, which is why, it's what I do, right? It's why people like me are needed. But if you want to do the work on your own, you have to develop that awareness and you have to be able and willing to take a look at it and to take a look at what you are doing and feeling as well, which is hard. It's hard.
yeah, I think it's hard, especially in the beginning, because when you start, and I even several years ago did a whole summit on awareness and mindfulness and meditation. And I think in the beginning, it can be difficult when you're not used to slowing down and when you're not used to really listening to your thoughts. I feel like we get so caught up and so attached to our thoughts that in the beginning it can be difficult. And that's why I do think it is extremely helpful to have a coach or a mentor or someone to help walk you through that process and hold you accountable to show up in the beginning. And I just remember, starting out meditating and not really knowing what to do because I assumed, okay, I just have to sit here and I'm not supposed to have any thoughts about anything. And I started to listen to various different speakers and things who talked about it's not about quieting the mind because the mind never really turns off completely. It's just about learning to listen to your thoughts and then observing, okay, well, how does these thoughts actually affect my behaviors and how do these behaviors affect my relationship? And I really love how you tied it back to family because a lot of the things we experience in our families are when we are children. That's when we're like shaping our beliefs. And we never, a lot of times, we don't think to challenge those.
Right.
And I remember several years ago, I was struggling because I was in a job that I didn't really, I mean, I'm a teacher. And so I love teaching. But at this one particular point in my life, I was at a school that I hated. I hated the to most of the other staff. I didn't like the administration. The students were just like, it was so overwhelming. And I remember having a conversation with someone, and I was like, I wish I didn't have to choose between my happiness and money. And they said, well, that's just the way it is. And I remember thinking in my head, but that's like your story. I want to write a new story. And it took lots of years and me actually going once again back to believing that that could happen. And now I'm in like my dream school and I love it and I plan to retire there. And so, but bringing it back to family too, I was, when I get triggered, I really take a step back and see like, okay, is this really something they're doing or is this like me? And a lot of times I'll find like the little tiny things that trigger me actually have to do with the very first time somebody ever did that to me, and it was in my family. And
Mhm.
so I just think it's interesting that you kind of, you know, circled back around to a lot of these things like being emotionally available or whatever are patterns that are in our families too, and
Yes.
really working through that. And so, how can people really learn to, I guess, realize and take like that personal responsibility for their healing, whether it is in these relationships or just in their lives in general?
That is probably one of the biggest shifts and the hardest shifts for people to make. Um, My sister and I grew up in the same house. She is still in victim consciousness about
And
everything. I was in victim consciousness until I learned about the spiritual principles. That gave me, it's almost like it gave me permission to take charge of my own life. Because at that point of view, my worldview was that things just happen to you. Now I know on the other side of that, no. I mean, sometimes random shit will happen. It just will. But for the most part, you are creating the things that are happening to you out in your life. Everything that you have was a thought or was you did something to bring into your life. And when you can start to take responsibility for that, your life will absolutely change. So here's what I would challenge um someone to do. Look at something you have in your room and think about what you did to bring that into your life. You know, what did you go to the store? Did think about it first? Was it just an impulse buy? Whatever it was, you had to do something to bring it in. So therefore, you are creating, right? Now you can take that and look at an instance. Well, that might be a little bit too much for for, for this podcast, but if you are stuck in victim consciousness and you think that there's nothing you can do and that things just happen to you, I would absolutely suggest that you explore the spiritual principles and how energy works. They've been proven, science has proven pretty much all of those spiritual laws and principles. It is science. So then it becomes, how can I use that to get what I want? But there's always going to be a price, right? So the reason why people stay in victim consciousness is because it's giving them something. Um, for say in my sister's case, where she's still very much in, well, I'm not going to do anything for him because he didn't do things for me, and in this whole victim consciousness. So what is that giving her to stay thinking about that? And without asking her outright, I can pretty much venture some good guesses what it's giving her. It is giving her the permission to not take responsibility, right? To not have to do anything with my dad because she doesn't want to. I get that. I, don't really want to be around the guy either. But I have kind of shifted the way that I think about my relationship with him, and she hasn't. So also, if you are still stuck in a victim consciousness and you say maybe do have a partner, there could be a part of you that feels like if you change, then your partner might not be aligned with you anymore. You won't be, maybe that is a threat to the relationship. So at the end of the day, it's your comfort zone,
Mm.
right? And what I'm going to tell everybody here is what you're looking for is not in your comfort zone. If it was, you would already have it. So if you're looking for a relationship and you want to stay in your comfort zone, you're going to stay looking. You're not going to find him. It's not just going to show up on your doorstep, right? You got to go and do something. You got to change something.
Mm.
That's energy. That's what we don't understand. Like when you stay in your comfort zone and you say you feel like you're stuck in a rut and you can't get out,
Mm.
right? So that's your energy is drawn in. Your energy is where you are, and it doesn't want to go and do anything different because then that feels different to you, right? So you're keeping your energy the same, right? Remember at the beginning, we talked about how you are basically this energy being, right? And you can send your energy out and you can receive. So if you are staying stuck where you are in your comfort zone, your energy is staying the same. You're not expanding it out, right? You're keeping it the same. So you're going to create the same things you've always been creating with that particular energy. If you want to shake things up, you have to do something different. You have to get outside of your comfort zone because that is going to put some pressure on your energy to change and move and do something, right? And the more you can keep that movement in all directions, the more you can create.
Mhm.
So when you're in victim, it keeps you stuck. And there's a lot of comfort to being stuck,
Mm.
unfortunately. I do this still myself. I catch myself doing it all the time. It's a very easy thing to fall into.
It is. And I
So,
think so
yeah.
many of us stay there for so long. And I know in my personal healing, I wanted to blame everything else. Oh, well, I'm just the way I am because of X, Y, and Z. And I'm the way I am because I'm depressed and I have anxiety and I've been diagnosed with this and that. And that's like the reason I
Mhm.
stay stuck all the time. It's like these things. And when I don't remember exactly what clicked, but it just clicked one day that, wow, like I really am responsible for every single thing in my life, the people, the jobs,
Mhm.
everything. And it can be at first overwhelming. And then I think the more you do the things and have the mindfulness practice or work with a mentor, therapist, whatever, um, it shifts from being overwhelming to being empowering.
Mhm.
And yeah, so
Well, you kind of have to build your tolerance for it. So if you do find yourself stuck in a comfort zone, just take small steps at first. Just small steps, start to expand because it's going to feel uncomfortable. It's supposed to. So don't take big, huge steps at first. Just take some little small ones and then you can always come back. But make sure you go in and out. Don't just stay in your zone. Like the more you get out, the more tolerance you're going to build. And that moves your comfort zone from like right here to, out into the world as far as you want it to be. And the bigger that zone is, the more you're going to enjoy your life, the more you're going to be able to create the things that you actually want in your life.
100%. And it is, like you said, it's a process. So for
Mhm.
anybody listening, these things don't always happen, instantly or overnight, especially if you've been in that stuck in that victim mode or whatever, most of your life. So just really give yourself space and compassion as you move through it. But like you said, still do the things. Don't let that stop you from starting, because it's just, as one of my therapists used to always say, small changes over long periods of time equal results. And so, like, I know for me, when I started doing the work and really working with my emotions and being just grounded and rooted in my physical body, I wasn't even consciously trying to manifest a partner that was in alignment with me. But it just kind of happened. And now, we've been together for a year and a half, and it is the healthiest relationship I've ever been in. And every now and then, I can still see my thought pattern shifting back to like past things. And there's a part of me that's like, but do I really like deserve this? Like to have like this relationship that's relatively easy and, they give me all the attention and affection that I need, whatever. And so, yeah, there's still a small part of me that does question, well, do I really deserve this? Because I've done some not so nice things in past relationships. And so there's a part of me, I guess, that thinks like I don't deserve to have a healthy relationship. But when I say it out loud, it's kind of like it sounds silly. Of course, I deserve a great relationship, even if I did make mistakes in the past, because it helped, shape who I am um, today. Mhm.
Well, and that's the thing. You're not the same person that you were back then.
Mhm.
I'm not the same person I was last year.
Yeah.
Like we change and we don't give ourselves enough credit for that.
Mhm.
That's literally our job here on the planet is to grow and change,
Yep.
you know? And then yet we want to hold ourselves, back to, you know, punishing ourselves for stuff that we did when we were a completely different version of ourselves.
Yeah. So, how does it feel now to be with your current partner, and compared to like past relationships? Like, how does it feel like in your body? Like, how is it different from the other ones? How did you really know that this one was, you know, the one that you wanted to actually marry?
Yeah. First off, it was easy. It was really the easiest relationship that I have ever been in.
Mm,
We have the same core values, so we don't really fight about a lot of
mm,
stuff. And when we do have agreements, it's usually or disagreements, it's usually pretty easy to work out. Like
mm,
it's just an easy relationship. Like he sees something that needs to be done and he just does it. I never have to like get on him about doing anything and, vice versa. So I think the biggest thing is that we're both willing to put in 200%, not just our 100%. Like
mm,
we're putting in way more because what that does is that the energy of the relationship, right? If you have two people only doing their own part or seeing themselves as two individuals in a relationship, then it's not going to be as powerful and it's not going to be as strong. But when you've got two people that want to contribute to the betterment of each other and the relationship, like that really expands that energy and it just makes it so much easier and more supportive. Um, so how it felt in my body, well, I was not used to feeling supported.
mm,
At first it felt uncomfortable and I did push him away. I at first wasn't attracted to him, so I friend zoned him.
mm,
And then I had a little come to Jesus moment with myself where I was like, you know what? None of my past boyfriends would have done half
mm,
of the stuff that he is doing for me. Like, he checks all the boxes. Why am I pushing this away? And I kind of realized that I'm just not used to this. I'm not used to this
Mm.
kind of energetic in a relationship. I'm used to having to pursue someone and, you know, force my will. And here he's
Mhm.
just giving me love. And
Yeah.
so that to me was probably the biggest thing, was I didn't have to work for his affection. I didn't have to prove myself. I didn't need his validation, right? It was like he was just giving it. He was just giving me all this stuff. And that can be overwhelming and it can make people push that away. So the other thing was, I had to be willing to let in the love. I had to be willing to let him help me because I had my idea that I was just this strong individual woman and I should be able to do everything on my own and, I don't need help. So this was a guy that was like, he would actually get upset when I wouldn't let him help me.
Mm.
He would just be like, "What is your problem? I want to do this for you." So he challenged my beliefs about myself in a good way,
Mhm.
not a bad way. Like, he could have um gone with those beliefs and just been, like the boyfriend you were talking about that was putting you last, right? Because you were putting yourself last. Well, he could have just been like, I don't know, you can figure it out. You're an adult, right? And not supported me.
Mm.
But instead, he went against the way that I was treating myself and decided to be true to himself and show me, like, through action, that it's okay to receive these things. And so that made me go, oh, well, I guess there are people that want to support me. I had never noticed that before.
Mm.
So the biggest thing is you need to understand what you want from a relationship and seat that in your body. Because if you don't, you're going to be like me. And when it's offered to you, because you don't know how it feels and it feels weird at first, you're going to push it away. So, along with this list that you make of the things that you want in a partner, make sure you also list out how you want to feel. You want to feel supported. You want to feel like you have autonomy, that you can do the things that you want to do, right? You want to feel like your needs are going to be met when you ask for them. And if you've never felt those things before, then you need to find examples of times where other people may have given you a glimpse of that
Mm.
and remember how that felt. So you have to like tie it to something. Because I've had a lot of people be like, well, I've never had a boyfriend support me. No, but you've probably been supported by a best friend.
Mhm.
You've probably been supported by maybe a grandparent. Remember that. Go back to that thread, go back to that feeling, bring it in, and just make sure that you can conjure that feeling in your body. Like these are the things that I work with my clients on because a lot of them are like, I don't know how to feel that. Like, I bet you do. You felt it at some point because we all generate our own feelings. No one makes you feel anything. You feel it as a result of something that they did.
Right.
So we practice bringing that in. And if you've never had an example, then we can conjure one.
Mm.
What
Yeah,
do
and
you
I
think
think
it would feel like?
mhm. Yeah,
So
those are
it's
all.
very important to bring that somatic part in.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the part a lot of people forget, like as we've already talked about, how does this feel in your body? And I love the idea too, of just like writing down things that you want. I remember several years ago when I was took zero responsibility for anything in my life and I didn't even know what I wanted. And I was complaining to this therapist about these two relationships that I was in at the same time and which one I should pick or should I not pick any of them. I was very focused on like just like that kind of stuff. And she just said, "Well, what do you want?" And I couldn't answer the question. And so she was like, for homework, she's like, and I'm not even talking about just relationships. Like, what do you want in your life? What do you want for you? And I mean, it took me like hours to make that list. And,
Yeah.
so some of these things that we talk about can be really simple,
Hmm.
like meditating and listening to your thoughts or listing what you want. Even though they're simple, though, sometimes they can still be challenging.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, as we kind of thank you again so much for being here. I love your insight and your perspective on energetics and relationships and how they overlap. Is there anything else that you want to speak about or add to before we close?
The only last thing I want to say is that it might sound a little overwhelming to you if you're just new to all this and you've never thought about relationships in this way. So I would say just pick one thing that you want to start doing. So maybe it's the meditation, maybe you want to start down that path. Maybe it's thinking about what it is that you really want and getting clear on that. But just don't try to do everything all at once. Just pick one thing, and it's going to lead to another, and lead to another, and lead to another. So you are supported divinely. You have support around you that you cannot see. They are going to lead you down that path if you let them. Okay, so just start, and everything will be revealed from there.
Mhm. Yep. Just got to start somewhere with one, one thing is all you
Mhm.
need. And if you are interested in learning more about Jen, what she does, possibly even working with her, I'll have links to all of her social media and you can reach out. Thank you again for being on the podcast. Thank you to anyone watching or listening, and we'll see you next time.
All right, thanks, Kristen.
Thank you.